Hi, good morning, or afternoon, or evening, or night, or whatever it is for you. Um, it's about 6 a.m. for me. Yesterday was my first day of vacation, so I allowed myself to probably drink more than I should have. And anyway, I woke up very early, and I've had this idea in my head. I've been mulling it over quite a bit, and well, I thought it might be useful to share it. Not that anyone watches these, but well, you could probably learn a lot from it. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. So I've been thinking of this problem that we have as humans, um, and it goes by different names depending on what scientific um, category that you're studying or reading. So in economics, because that's what I majored in economics, it's called revealed preference. So people say one thing. The classic experiment is Tesla, not Tesla. What was it? Priuses. Priuses. People say, "I love Priuses because they're just so good for the environment." That's what they say. But you can kind of test them a little bit and say, "Well, actually, I have this other car. No one knows its name. It doesn't look very nice, but it's actually even more, way more fuel efficient than a Prius. It's really great for the environment." And it turns out people don't really buy it. Why? Well, presumably because the revealed preference is that it wasn't that the car was good for the environment. That's not actually what mattered. They say that's what mattered. That's not actually what mattered. What mattered was that they could kind of show off a bit by having a Prius. And the same thing is true nowadays with like a Tesla, or I don't even know what other things there are. I don't pay much attention to the media, or I don't know, popular culture, mainstream culture, whatever it is. But yeah, so in economics, it's called revealed preference. In social psychology, it's called the AB problem, the attitude behavior problem. Same thing. So you ask people, well, for instance, you ask, um, like, I mean, the book that I read it from most recently is The Social Dimension of Sex by Roy Baumeister and who else was it? Diane Tice or something. And it basically said, like, look, you ask people, uh, I don't know, how many partners do you want? And people say, oh, I want like one partner for the rest of my life. But wouldn't you know, like down the road, um, they change their mind a little bit. Or, I mean, the AB problem could be found in pretty much anything. You ask people, and you know what? This gets into like this social presentation. What is it called? This, I don't know what it's called, but yeah, it's like this social presentation bias where, you think people want to hear a certain thing, so that's what you tell them. Or there's like this social approval of being the type of person that says this thing. And so you say it even though that's not necessarily what you believe. The AB problem. Um, and I've been thinking about this recently. It's well, I've been reading books on like evolution and like how did the mind evolve, and like what are we doing in life? And it dawns on me that and you can disagree about the scientific results about how true this is or whether it's true, but like there's books written on this. There's the big one is Robert Trivers. What is it? What is that book called? Anyway, it's about self-deception. It's about self-deception. So we believe something, but you can test us, and it turns out that even though we believed it, that's not necessarily um, what we thought deep down. And so, in like evolution, maybe it's called like this conscious self-deception that we do as humans. Maybe it's, I've read it, I forget where I've read it, but they also call it like conscious inessentialism, or epiphenomenalism. It's a related concept. It's just this idea that what's going on in your brain that you think is your brain is like this conscious layer that actually is like adapted to believe things that are like useful to believe, and the things that aren't so useful to believe, you don't believe, even though deep down you know what in fact you know. So I guess so epiphenomenalism, it's also related to this other idea. I think this would be in behavioral economics. You would find this idea. Who's the big author? Daniel Kahneman, or maybe Dan Ariely. This idea that the brain, the conscious brain, is a press secretary. What you think of as your brain, the part that does all the thinking, the part that you have this inner monologue in your head, well, most people do, and you're all just thinking throughout the day, I'm an honest person, I'm a virtuous person, I try really hard in life, I like this person, I don't like that person, all these things that you're thinking in your head. That's kind of the end result of what your brain is actually doing. What your brain is actually doing is some other things. But what you have access to, this conscious brain that you think of as yourself, the information in your brain that you actually have access to is like the press secretary. It doesn't actually make a lot of the decisions. It just kind of rationalizes the outcome. So that's called the conscious brain as a press secretary, not as the actual president or agent doing the thinking. So I just want to get really deep into this topic because it's like a lot of the topics that I read and I make a couple of videos about, it's not something that like 99.99% of people would ever run into, because people don't generally read books, people don't generally take an interest in science or these types of concepts, these types of subjects that I guess would lead you to run into this thing, this set of topics, that the conscious brain, who you think of as yourself, is it's not actually the one in control, and it doesn't even have access to all the information that your unconscious brain actually has access to. And there have been replication issues. So, it could be that a lot of the science looked like this was true. Maybe it turns out it's not true. There is this replication crisis in a lot of psychology, but, there's a lot of data. And as I've said, it crosses so many subjects that it's kind of hard to ignore it. It's just this idea that we believe one thing, but wouldn't you know if our behavior reveals that we actually believe something else? And, it could be this lying thing, this social presentation thing. It could be this like self-deception, like you honestly believe something, but somehow deep down you betray what you thought you believed. And so I've been reading these books on like evolution, and it just dawned on me like, well, if you think about it, evolution has been going on for like 2 billion years or something. I don't really know the exact number, but it's a long time. If you don't believe that, that's fine, but for the sake of arguments, we're going to run with that assumption because that's what most of science seems to agree with as it is now. So evolution has been going on for like 2 billion years. Genes, and like when I was in high school, the biology teacher, he would kind of joke, but not really joke because it's true. he would say, you know what, we're not actually, our lives are not actually for us. They're actually for our genes, our DNA. We're kind of like robots that our genes, our DNA created to help them. And we all kind of thought, oh yeah, that's funny. But like the more you look at books on evolution, the more you look at science, like that's not too far off. What was I reading? I started reading, well, I read both books by Satoshi Kanazawa, The Intelligence Paradox and Why Beautiful People Have More Daughters. Great books. I don't know why they're not super popular, because these were some of the coolest ideas I've read in like years. And then I've been reading Genome by Matt Ridley. It's an all right book. It's actually pretty good, but he does get a couple things wrong. For instance, about he makes a statement about the bell curve. He says the bell curve by Charles Murray is all about racism, and I couldn't help but think, no, it's not. There's one chapter about race. The whole book is basically proving the fact that IQ matters, not social economic status, or at least IQ matters more than social economic status in determining all these life outcomes. That's the whole point of the bell curve, is it's IQ, not social economic status, that matters the most. But people mistake it for being about racism. I guess that's just the cultural context it was released in. I don't know. But yeah, Matt Ridley, Genome. It's a pretty good book so far. I started reading Jeffrey Miller's book, The Mating Mind. I don't know what I think of it yet. It's a neat book. I'm only a couple chapters in, and yeah, just generally books on like evolution. I mean, I made a video of my bookshelf. You can, if you're really interested, you could look at my bookshelf. But yeah, so I've read those books lately, and it just dawns on me like, no, actually, it's not wrong to think that we are like kind of these adaptive, problem-solving creations designed to proliferate our genes. So they say, for instance, that well, there's all kinds of concepts. I mean, there's an endless array of concepts, but yeah, you can look at this like, obviously, if you don't believe this, that's fine, but wouldn't you know if you have kids, you actually are proliferating your genes, or you help out your family, and you help out people like you, and wouldn't you know that actually proliferates your genes? Wouldn't you know if that's not what you believe, but turns out that's what you're doing anyway. That's like your revealed preference in a way. And yeah, it just dawns on me like, okay, so genes have been doing this for 2 billion years. They're really good at doing this. And what we subjectively experience as like the world, and like our brains and our consciousness and all our creations, cultural, technological, political, wars, anything that we're doing, well, we say it's about one thing. I really believe in this political cause. I really believe in, I don't know, liking Clark's Wallabies or something. I really just like Taylor Swift. People say this. But wouldn't you know if the net result of all these things that we're doing is just the proliferation of our genes, the efficient, like adaptive proliferation of our genes? Wouldn't you know if that's actually what we're doing? Yeah, and it just dawned on me like, well, so if our brains have been, not our brains, but if genes have been doing this for 2 billion years, they're really good at it. They've adapted to solve like almost any conceivable problem, because that's what 2 billion years of evolution can do, is it adapts to solve any conceivable problem. And if it didn't, then it wouldn't still be around. I mean, that's how it would work. So it just dawns on me like, well, if genes have been doing this for 2 billion years, and what we experience as our conscious subjective selves and our stated intentions and our stated emotions and our stated goals in life and all these things that we think we're doing, if you look deeper, maybe they would all just betray the fact that you were in fact adaptively, to the best of evolution has designed you to do, you would in fact just adaptively be doing that, just proliferating your genes. And yeah, it's just if you take it too far, I mean, maybe you deny that you even have free will. You're just this automaton designed by your genes. But certainly, our brains can do something. And I've been thinking about this, like, well, what layer is consciousness? Is it really the press secretary? We have no power at all, and there's no free will necessarily. We just kind of rationalize post hoc, after the fact, what our brains are actually doing. Or is it the case that we do have like some conscious ability to, like, top-down power to say, I deny that any of this is actually what's happening, and I refuse to, like, adaptively proliferate my genes or something. And wouldn't you know, if that happened, to also adaptively proliferate your genes anyway, because somehow that was like a social signal, and it led to your people doing well in life or something. But yeah, I've been thinking about this, like, this whole conscious, revealed preference, the AB problem, self-deception, conscious inessentialism, epiphenomenalism. If I didn't explain those well enough, those concepts basically say, like, look, your brain is designed by evolution for, brains have been around for, what, a couple 100 million years maybe? I don't really know, but, brains have been around for a long time. They're actually really good at what they're doing, proliferating genes. That actually what you experience as yourself, when you think, when you feel, what you experience, consciousness, is little more than like a side effect of what's actually going on. Like, that your brain is this tool designed by genes to help them proliferate. And And so I want to just go over, like, a couple things that maybe you would want to know about this. First of all, I guess I'll talk about what is it called? The Gazzaniga experiments, Michael Gazzaniga. Those are great experiments to suggest, how replicable they are, I don't know, but to the best of what psychology has done, maybe it would seem to be the case that this is true. So the Gazzaniga experiments were basically where people realized that your brain has like two halves, the left and the right half, right? And for some reason, like, the brain kind of switches, like, which part of your body it controls, something like that. Like the left side of your brain actually controls your right eye, and the right side of your brain actually controls your left eye, something like that. I forget the exact mechanism, but basically you can divide which half of your body is being controlled by which half of your brain. And so there were these people who had, like, mental disorders. And they found out that you can cure the mental disorder by basically slicing the brain in half, kind of, and cutting the corpus callosum. And people will say, well, actually, these are mentally ill people. Like, this doesn't prove anything. But, well, it kind of does if you run with the logic. Who knows how valid the logic is? But the logic goes like this. If your brain is cut in half, okay, so you'd also have to know that for the most part, your language and, like, thinking ability is from the left side of your brain, something like that. And so if you cut your brain in half so that the left and right parts of your brain cannot share information, communicate with each other, it would be the case that I'm just going to run with this, so that your left brain controls your right eye and your right brain controls your left eye. So the left brain has your language and thinking abilities in it. And so anything you see with your right eye, so these patients who had their brains cut in half, their corpus callosum was cut, anything they see in their right eye, they're consciously aware of. So if you show them a bottle of Coca-Cola, they say, oh, Coca-Cola, I love Coca-Cola. On the other hand, because the right half of the brain doesn't necessarily have the thinking and conscious abilities that we use our language and thinking to do. If you were to show the left side of your brain, I don't know the example, it was like a chicken farm or something. Show your left eye a chicken farm so that your right brain gets it. Turns out the conscious part of your brain, the left side of your brain, is not aware at all that it saw a chicken farm. But in fact, if you then ask someone like, "Hey, like here are these like tools in front of you. Do you want to pick a tool for any reason?" they kind of trick them. It's kind of funny, but yeah, they'll have like a set of tools in front of them. Like one will be like a shovel, one will be like an axe, one will be like, I don't know, like a spoon. And so the chicken coop, the chicken farm, it's dirty. You need to clean it. And so wouldn't you know if people pick up a shovel? They're not, their left eye has seen a chicken coop. And the left brain is not aware of it because the right brain is what got that information. So the left brain, that is the conscious part that we use to think, is not actually aware of the chicken coop. But turns out your brain has decided that you'll pick up a shovel because, like, some part of your brain knows that there's a chicken coop, you need to clean it. And when you ask people, why did you pick up a shovel? They don't say, I don't know. You know, that would be rational if, in fact, some part of your brain knows that there's a chicken coop, you need to clean it, and you're not aware of that part of your brain. It would be rational to just say, I don't know. I don't know why I picked up a shovel. You know, the real reason is because you saw a chicken coop, you want to clean it with a shovel. But instead, they kind of just make up reasons. And the weird thing is that they believe the reasons. So they'll pick up a shovel and they'll say, you know what, I just really felt like shoveling today. Or they'll pick up the shovel and they'll explain it and they'll say, I don't know, the shovel just looked really good. I just thought this shovel is really like cool looking. And they did funny other experiments too, like for Coca-Cola, they would, I think the left ear is connected to the left brain and the right ear is connected to the right brain. So these same patients, they had their corpus callosum cut, their left and right brains cannot talk to each other, and the conscious thinking part of their brain is the left part of their brain. So anything that goes in the right part of their brain, while it's their brain and it does motivate their actions and it does motivate some level of thinking, the actual conscious part of ourselves that are aware and do the thinking does not have access to that half of the brain. So they would say, like, they would whisper in the right ear of these patients, which the conscious brain would not have access to. They would whisper in the right ear of these patients. They would say, can you get up and go get a Coca-Cola? And they would, right? And you'd ask them, why did you get up and get a Coca-Cola? And the conscious, rational thinking, the part that we consider ourself, the conscious part of our brain, it didn't have access to why it got the Coca-Cola. And it didn't say, I don't know. That would be rational. If you don't know why you got a Coca-Cola, you could just say, I don't know. They didn't say, I don't know. They said, I'm just really thirsty. Or, I don't know, I felt like getting up. I felt like getting up and I just need some sugar right now. They make up reasons post hoc. They just rationalize their decisions. All the things that their brain is doing, kind of like under the hood, they're not aware of any of it, and yet the brain is a ready-made fabricator. That's what they called it. It's the brain, the conscious part of our brain that we think is ourself, that we use to think, is a ready-made fabricator. It comes up with reasons for why we do what we do, even though, like, under the hood, there's a lot else going on that we just don't have access to. Yeah, so that was the Gazzaniga experiment. So it was just proving that actually you can cut someone's brain in half, and the right half of their brain is not the conscious thinking part of the brain. And so wouldn't you know it, if it motivates them to do things, it gets information, and yet they're not even aware of why and what they're doing. So yeah, the Gazzaniga experiments, that was very elucidating, if it's true. So the other thing that kind of like relates to this concept of like, well, revealed preference, the AB problem, conscious inessentialism, self-deception. What other names do you even call it? There's a lot of names that you can call this. That just this idea that like this conscious thinking part of our brain that we think is ourself is not actually what's going on. What's going on is like our genes created this tool, this brain, and it's adaptively been using it for hundreds of millions of years to navigate whatever life adaptive events it can do to proliferate genes like that. And this conscious part of ourself is actually little more than it's like post hoc, maybe ad hoc fabricator. It thinks it knows what it's doing. It thinks it has access to the truth, and for the most part it does. But if you look really closely, sometimes your behavior reveals, it betrays the fact that what you thought you were doing is not actually what you're doing. So the other kind of related concept to this is, what do they call it? Pluralistic ignorance. So pluralistic ignorance is this idea that, well, we have this social presentation bias. There are these things that people kind of want to hear, or it's socially correct to say. And the example they always give is like in Soviet Russia. In Soviet Russia, in the Soviet Union, you say that the president is great, and you agree with everything that he's doing. You're expected to say that. And if you didn't say that, people would be really suspicious. Maybe you'd have the police arrest you and kill you or something. I don't really know. But basically, yeah, you have to say that. You have to believe that. Under threat of all kinds of things. So there's this social presentation bias, and what ends up happening, pluralistic ignorance, what ends up happening, you personally would think to yourself, actually, the president is not so great. Actually, there's a lot of things going wrong in this country, and I think things could be better, or something like that. But everyone around you tells you that the president is great, and the Soviet Union is great, and everything they're doing is great, that you kind of think to yourself, well, I must be wrong, because everyone else seems to say that. So you think that everyone else actually believes that. But deep down, actually, wouldn't you know that everyone else is kind of thinking like you too? Is actually, I don't know if everything that I'm saying is true, if the president is great and everything the government is doing is great, but everyone else says it's true, so I guess I'll say it's true, and I guess I'll kind of think that it's true. Pluralistic ignorance. So it gets to the point where if everyone else is saying something, you don't necessarily know, but everyone else is not necessarily believing what they say, but all you know is what they say, and so you kind of believe that that what they say is what they believe, even though it's not necessarily, even though you personally have doubts that what you say is what you believe. So yeah, pluralistic ignorance. Let's see, what other like related concepts would this kind of come up under? Well, as they say, we do a lot of things with body language that we're actually unconscious of. One time, one time I read it, I think it was in David Buss's book, was it The Dangerous Passion? About like sexual jealousy, about how, well, we evolved to procreate, and it turns out, well, this is a male exclusive problem, actually. Turns out if you have a mate, a partner, you're married, whatever, and your partner goes behind your back and has sex with someone else, you don't necessarily know that. But, well, it's a pretty big deal. Genetically speaking, they say a man to be cuckolded is, like, genetically the same as a woman being raped. That's what they say. I don't know if that's true. I don't necessarily. Well, anyway, because basically what's happening is your ability to procreate has been taken away from you, and forced to be used for someone else, kind of. So males have this problem of paternity uncertainty. And so males have evolved to be extremely sexually jealous, to mate guard, they call it mate guarding, and do other things like, display a lot of love and commitment to kind of coerce that his mate would never cheat on him. But so there was this, and it is just a, what do you call it? So this is just like a single story, but it kind of also elucidates this thing that we're doing unconsciously with like body language. So basically, David Buss's book, The Dangerous Passion, about sexual jealousy and like males having to mate guard because there's paternity uncertainty and they could be cuckolded, and that would be the end of like their genetic life, that they actually are really inclined to prevent that from happening. Basically, this man in the story, it's a true story, presumably, he noticed that his wife, this is Christmas time, he noticed that his wife's Christmas lights were blinking at the same time as his neighbor's Christmas lights. Clearly, that's not a reason to think your wife's cheating on you, clearly, right? But that's like the conscious part of his brain. The conscious part of his brain said, hey, that's odd. Our lights are blinking at the same time. What could that mean? But like on the unconscious part of the brain that has access to a lot of other subtle like body language information, maybe he knew that, his wife just kind of messes with her hair a bit when like the neighbor's around, or maybe, I don't know, his neighbor smirks a lot, or, some unconscious body language processes are going on, or he picked up on this idea that actually maybe his wife is cheating on him with his neighbor. And it turns out she was. But he didn't have access to all the unconscious cues and signals and signs and body language that kind of like led him to this conclusion. All he had conscious access to is the lights are blinking at the same time. But somehow he realized that in fact his wife was cheating on him. So that's just one story, anecdote or whatever. But the research is out there that, yeah, in fact, we do a lot of like unconscious body language cues, and presumably because people pick up on them. But we're not even aware that we're doing it, and it's not clear like what it's doing, but we're doing it apparently, like unconsciously. And so this brings me to this other concept, this related concept about for some reason I've lost my train of thought. It's very early. Unconscious body language. Let's see. So the brain as a press secretary device for the true interests of what we're doing adaptively. This is embarrassing. I've just completely lost my train of thought here. Let's see here. Well, I guess I've forgot about the reason why I was. Anyway, so yeah, the conscious brain isn't necessarily like the one making all of these decisions. It's like this other part of the brain that does a lot of these other unconscious things, like in the name of like genetic proliferation. And what we think of as our conscious brain, our self, the thinking part of what we're doing when we're thinking, like that. Oh, that's what it was. That's right. Okay, so basically, I don't know. I mean, this is a big topic. I mean, I wish I had a lot of time, and I had all the books in front of me, so I could just go one by one. And I wish that my brain could remember like every single detail of where these ideas came from. But basically, so the idea, I think the most prominent book that this idea comes from is Passions Within Reason by Robert Frank. Probably my favorite book, or one of them. It's this idea that like so we evolved to display emotions on our faces, right? Why would we do that? Because it's useful for people to know how we feel sometimes, right? And if it's so, this goes into like game theory, like economics game theory type of terminology, but they call it an honest signal. So if you're crying, that's an honest signal that you feel really deeply about something. If your cheeks redden, that's an honest signal that you're blushing, and so something must have embarrassed you, right? So our emotions can be honest signals. They reveal something about us that we can't hide, that it's true. It would have to be true because you can't fake a lot of emotions. They say when you smile, they say actually when you truly smile, your eyes kind of, what do? They kind of like tense up a bit. So you can tell that someone is honestly smiling by the way their eyes look. If someone is just smiling with their mouth, it turns out you can fake that. You can fake smiling with your mouth, but you can't really fake smiling with your eyes. Well, professional actors can, but the vast majority of us cannot. So when you smile, people say, actually, out of the few useful information that I got out of Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell, one of them was actually when you smile, when you see people smile, but their eyes do not tense up the way they naturally do when you actually smile. It looks weird. It looks kind of creepy when people fake a smile, because you know that something's not true about them smiling. Yeah. So basically, the idea is our emotions, like the facial emotions that we express, have been evolved to reveal our true states of mind because they can't be faked very easily, and so they're honest signals. They're ways of like proving how you feel is the emotions on your face, pretty much. But I've been thinking about this, like, well, actually, obviously, well, they also call this like the Machiavellian principle that humans have evolved to kind of like trick each other, but catch each other tricking, and it's just this runaway process of getting smarter and smarter and smarter at tricking people and catching people tricking you. So actually, though, I was thinking like, yeah, so some emotions, obviously, it's adaptive, it's useful to like have an honest signal about them. But sometimes it could be adaptive to fake, to be able to show an emotion that's not true. But presumably, that's really hard to do, and so we've evolved like unique emotions that are really hard to fake, like the blushing of the cheeks, or crying, or like the way the eyes tense up when you actually smile. And professional actors can fake those, but the majority of us can't. And Well, so it's adaptive to have honest signals about your emotions, but some emotions you don't want to show, like poker players, right? They don't want to show when they have a good hand. So actually, it's adaptive to, this is what I'm getting at, is it's adaptive to have and feel emotions when it's adaptive to like show them. But the emotions that you don't want people to know, maybe you become completely unaware of them. It's like a self-deception thing. You, like the emotions and the feelings that you wouldn't want people, like adaptively, evolution would not want other people to know. You would just not have conscious awareness of them. And that's, they call that self-deception, that your brain would evolve to fool yourself, and you in fact would not be consciously aware of what you're doing, because that way people wouldn't know that that's what you're actually thinking, because you don't even know that that's what you're actually thinking. So they say like, Passions Within Reason by Robert Frank. It basically says we had to evolve emotions because we have to be able to prove how we feel to people so that people know when to trust us or how we're feeling. Yeah. So I've been thinking about that too. Like, okay, so it's not only that our brain is doing all these thinking things that's adaptively evolved to like maximize genetic proliferation, given like all the institutions and culture and like other people doing the same thing and all these things that are going on. And the conscious part of our brain is only aware of like some things. Not only that, but it like actively hides some things. Like your brain actively hides some things from your conscious brain. As it's like a self-deception. Like even your, potentially even like, I don't want to say emotions, because emotions almost by definition is how you feel. But your brain is doing a lot that you don't have access to. And presumably some part of you is feeling something even though you consciously don't feel it, because it's like a self-deception thing. But yeah, so yeah, it's a big topic. It's I don't know how useful this could ever be to anyone, but these are ideas that are very interesting. How replicable they turn out to be, I mean, it varies based on the exact scientific study or concept, but clearly a lot of this is not false. Clearly we do say that we, I don't know, what's the one of the other ones that's like lately, um, it's kind of like online. I don't I don't know, maybe you'd have to watch some podcast or something to know this, but well, this is a revealed preference scenario again. Um, so they say on like dating apps, girls say, I want a guy who's really sweet and caring. Okay, that's what they say. But it turns out, you can kind of like sort out what guys say on their profile, and you can sort out like how tall guys are and how good they look. So even though girls say, generally, I mean, this is like a statistical thing, and this is on some dating apps. Who knows if this is even still true? But some people say actually, you can like sort out what people say on their profile, and the men who try to show somehow that they are like caring, nice people. That's not what the girls are swiping right on. The girls are swiping right on guys who are taller and better looking. So their revealed preference, even though they say, and probably they even consciously believe, that they want a guy who's caring and nice. But the revealed preference is actually they're swiping right on guys who are tall and good looking. Maybe some combination of the two, but that's a case of revealed preference. Like, wouldn't it be odd? Wouldn't it be the case, or wouldn't it happen to be that you say one thing but you do another thing? That's revealed preference. And I'm just saying, like, our brains are doing this. Like, our brains have been doing this for like the hundreds of millions of years that brains have. Well, I mean, to that extent, you would have to define like consciousness. When did consciousness evolve? I don't know. 100,000 years or something, maybe a million years. I mean, you can't necessarily know that, but yeah. So it's this clearly is a phenomenon. This clearly is happening, and of course, as clever, adaptive humans we are, we maybe we even internalize that this is happening, and we find ways to like optimally navigate them, to hide them or to prove them wrong, even though wouldn't happen to be the case that it still is in fact like how the brain is operating. So yeah, just this idea that like so much of what your brain is doing and has evolved adaptively to do to like maximize your genetic proliferation is not the same thing as what you think of as like your conscious thinking self, because that part of your brain is like this other layer, this side effect, this other layer that's kind of designed to both solve problems and think, but it's also designed to not be aware of a lot of what else is going on in your brain. Yeah, so revealed preference, A-B problem, self-deception, the Gazaniga experiment, pluralistic ignorance, emotions as honest signals, the conscious mind adapted to self-deceive, conscious inessentialism, epiphenomenalism, all these related concepts that refer roughly to the same thing. That our brains are doing something else than what we think of as ourselves and our thinking self. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. I don't know if this is useful to anyone, but yeah, it's a neat idea, and I'm sure that the vast majority of people have not really run into these concepts because they just don't generally read these types of books or listen to these types of authors or scientists. And yeah, I just wanted to, I suppose, I don't know, help someone who could know that, could use this information, or I don't know, but yeah, it's a neat idea. It's been mulling over in my head, and it crosses so many like scientific topics. It's kind of hard to ignore it once you've heard it enough times in a number of different topics. Yeah, so yeah, that's all.